Hi, Birthing Justice class. I am getting on here real quick just to create some sort of engagement because we are going into week 3, and I just feel like I want to engage with you all a little bit more. Thank you for everybody that has been consistently posting, and also for your patience as you receive my feedback. Those students that are in the class that have taken my classes before know that it's really fun to be in my class. You are challenged. You get to engage with concepts that a lot of times, as you all are learning the reasons why, you don't get to engage with within academia. But I also am very serious and committed to pushing you all to be the best, excuse me, versions of yourselves. So thank you if, sometimes you get my feedback and it's like, damn, but I really want you all to know that it's coming from a very sincere and loving place. So a quick note about a lot of what we've discussed in a sense virtually and what you've read. So we're really breaking down the fundamentals of how is it that in 2019 the US as a developed nation ranks really low when it comes to maternal care, especially as it relates to race and racism. A lot of the readings have broken down this phenomena from an intersectional perspective, and what that means is that you can't just look at the fact that it's black women that are, being affected. You can't just look at the fact that it's women. You can't just look at the fact that it's low income women, right? You have to look at the reality that our identities lie in intersections. So for example, I may identify as a black Latina woman who faces her own forms of oppression because of the way that I'm racialized. But I also understand that because of where I sit in the intersections of my identity, I have cisgendered or heteronormative privileges. I have a certain class privilege, and I have privileges because I'm a U.S. citizen, right? So just to get you all to understand some of the concepts that we're breaking down, we started with the erotic. A lot of you all got it, some of you all didn't, and that's okay because it's a really heavy text, even though it's very short. And I always, those students that know me and have taken my classes know that I start with this text in any class because I think it is essential to really understand that the erotic is so much more than sexual. It's so much more about being a woman. It's so much more about female. This is about femininity. It's about energy. It's about a power that lies in our beings that is ripped from us consciously. Because if we really tapped into the desires that lie within us, a lot of us wouldn't be where we are because we wouldn't be in a place that wouldn't allow us to feel free. And then that goes into like how that sense of like repression of our sense of pleasure and joy that's not just sexual, right? It can be sexual, but it can be when you're standing in the presence of a child, when you're on the beach, when you're listening to a song you like, when you're engaging in activism that really brings you to life, your erotic is being activated. You rip us, the state, the government, those in power have ripped us from the ability to tap into that joy, and it creates a snowball form of oppression that leaves us where we are today. The witches, midwives, and nurses, the Walliver pieces, a lot of the other pieces that talk on the history of the institutionalization of medicine taught you that medicine is not benign, meaning that medicine wasn't just created out of thin air in the US. It developed with a history that was dominated by white, cisgendered, heterosexual, elite, educated men that understood the power that lied in being able to not just heal people, but control people's access to the healing. And this is where you get the persecution of witches, right? With the witch hunts in Europe and then in the US. We don't go deep into the witch hunts in this virtual class because it's too dense for us to break this down virtually and in such a short amount of time. But it's such a fascinating piece of my real classes, or the classes that happen in real time, because it really gets us to see how femininity, right? And then the embodiment of that femininity in female bodies, right? Has been demonized to the point that a lot of people subconsciously, because these forms of oppression are conditioned in our minds in a subconscious level. And I think Liasia, I think I'm pronouncing your name right, I just commented on your comment on somebody's post on I think the forum piece that the Sylvia Winter piece I think on the 11th discusses, and I appreciate that distinction, that a lot of these forms of domination that we internalize and then project on each other are very subconscious, meaning that we don't do it consciously. So medicine was institutionalized, was professionalized, and was in turn dominated by white men, to the point that we had black hospitals that were then considered unconstitutional when the Civil Rights Act was passed in 1964, because politicians and those in power, like in the American Medical Association, claimed that black hospitals were against civil rights because they promoted segregation, right? So now we are at the Winter piece. I wanted to get on here because I recognize that the Sylvia Winter piece, a note to my colleagues, which was for the July 11th forum question, is a very dense piece, and is a piece that really sometimes takes me 2 days to break down in a real-time class. So it's a piece that she published at a conference where she's talking to her colleagues, and she's really getting people in academia to come to terms with the fact that a lot of you are saying in your forum responses that she's saying that she's blaming academics or academia for the institutionalization of forms of oppression like racism and sexism and homophobia. She's not necessarily saying that, but she is saying that academia, institutions of higher education, colleges, research foundations, academic journals are places where these ways of being have been cemented, have been formalized, and it's where they continue to be formalized. A lot of you all are blessed in that you all attend the City University of New York, different campuses, particularly City College, which is one of the most diverse colleges in the United States. You can look this up, where not only is the professoriate or your professors relatively diverse, but the content that you engage with is more diverse than if you were in a predominantly white institution. But for the majority of cases, like in my case, where I went to SUNY Binghamton and then Syracuse University, a lot of not just the professors, but the content that you engage with is very Eurocentric, and it still places whiteness and maleness and cisgenderedness and heteronormativity and U.S. national identities as the center of those that are considered more human. And Winter is saying that there's a hierarchy where the bottom of the hierarchy are black people. And I always break this down with regards to colorism in my class. It's not just black people, but dark-skinned black people. And those that know what I'm saying. And those that don't know, I really wish I could engage with you deeper, but I'm trying to make this as brief as possible. But it's not just about being black and race as such, but there are black people like myself and others who are phenotypically lighter skin and don't face the same level of oppression than someone who has darker skin. So she's saying is the darker skin, working poor, particularly black men, in this case during the LA riots in Rodney King in the mid-1990s, that she used as an example of how dehumanization occurs, because after the Rodney King beatings, a lot of you were not even born but should know this monumental epic moment in civil rights in the U.S. The LAPD was found through classified documents to have used the NHI acronym to refer to black working class men in police reports, and NHI within the LAPD was said to mean no human involved. So whenever there was a black person, but a black man of a working poor, as Winter referred to it, was engaged in a conflict that the LAPD was present to, they would refer to them as non-human. And she breaks that down to say that this is not new, this is very old, it stems from like Europe and then the Columbus narrative, but it's cemented or made formal through education, whereas I say and others, we learn a canon of dead white men when a lot of you all come to my class and you reference Locke and Kant and Descartes and all these like old white men that have contributed important aspects to our development as a species, but are not the only ones. And we as people have been conditioned to believe that it's only Europeans or people of European descent and men at that have contributed to our understanding of human existence, right? So that's where we are today. The remainder of the content of the class is going to go even a little deeper into the particularities of birth injustice and how is it that women of color, queer women, trans women, immigrant, undocumented people are mistreated within maternal care in the U.S. And then we're also going to break down what is being done about it. These anti-abortion laws that are trying to be passed in Georgia and Alabama, and so much just stuff that's happening this summer with regards to civil rights and the ICE raids happening across cities in these couple of past days, and the ICE camps and on the border. There's just so much around the fact and the reality that we still live in a country that dehumanizes people based on race, based on gender, based on sexual orientation, based on nationality. And this class is really trying to like see how that dehumanization shows up in the context of maternal care. So keep at it. Y'all doing a beautiful job. Hit me up, reach out to me, email me if you need any sort of assistance. Some of you already have, and I appreciate you for that. Keep up the good work, and I really look forward to you all finishing strong.